Salve to Discipuli. This video is hopefully going to clear up some of the confusion with regarding the different uses of to when converting it from English into Latin. All right, so we've got three different uses of the word to. One of them is as a prepositional phrase, both in English and in Latin. This will always have a preposition. The second use we're going to talk about is the indirect object. This is when a word is indirectly receiving the action of the verb. Sometimes this will have the word to in front of it in English, sometimes it won't, just depending on where it is in the sentence. But in Latin, this will just always be indicated by the dative case. And then there's the infinitive, and this is the most generic form of a verb, like to run, to love, to eat, etc. All right, so our first one that we're going to explore is prepositional phrases. In Latin, it's going to be ad. In English, it's to, sometimes towards. So go ahead and pause the video, copy down these three sentences, try to translate them into Latin, and then unpause the video and compare your work with mine. All right, so our first one, the boy runs to the house. That would be puer currit ad casam. Ad casam means to the house. The boy runs to the house. Grumio walks to the kitchen. This would be grumio ad culinam ambulat. The ship sails to the island. Navis ad insulam navigat. The next one we're going to talk about is indirect objects. In English, we can indicate those as putting a to or for in front of it. Sometimes we can switch it around just by the position. In Latin, it's always just going to be in the dative case. There are no extra words to go with it. It's simply in the dative. Here's three examples in English. Mom gave a book to Dad. We could also say Mom gave Dad a book. I'm just putting the to in here because that's the focus of our lesson. This little word right here that causes so many problems. Grumio offers dinner to the master. Clemens tells a story to Quintus. Again, pause the video, copy down these three sentences, try to translate them into Latin, and then compare your work with mine. Okay, the first one, Mom gave a book to Dad. That would be mater librum patri dedit. Mater is in the nominative because that's a subject. Librum is in the accusative because that's directly receiving the action of the verb. It's what's being given. Patri is in the dative because it's the indirect object. Dad here is indirectly receiving the action of the verb. Grumio offers dinner to the master. Grumio caenam domino offert. So Grumio is in the nominative, he's the subject. Caenam is directly receiving the action of the verb, it's what's being offered. The master is indirectly receiving the action of the verb. Clemens tells a story to Quintus. Clemens fabulam quinto narrat. So Clemens is nominative, it's the subject. Fabulam is accusative, it's the direct object. Quinto is dative, it's the indirect object. All right, the next one is the infinitive. This comes from our second principal part. It looks like ara, era, or era. I want to have dinner. Grumio ought to cook food. It is necessary for the sailor to sail. So these are all just super generic forms of the verb, to have, to cook, to sail. Again, pause the video, copy these down, translate them into Latin, compare your work with mine. Okay, the first one, I want to have dinner. Ego means I. Volo is want. Caenam is in the direct object because it's directly receiving the action of the verb. Habera is an infinitive, and it's a complementary infinitive. I want to have. Grumio ought to cook food. So grumio is our subject. Debet is our main verb. Coquere, to cook, is our complementary infinitive. It is necessary for the sailor to sail. Necessa est nautai navigare. It is necessary for the sailor to sail. All right, now let's quiz yourselves a little bit. You tell me, which of these three are the three different types? Copy these sentences down, try to translate them into Latin, and then tell me, is it a prep phrase? Is it an indirect object? Or is it an infinitive? All right, our first one, Melissa sends flowers to Grumio. Okay, to Grumio is not a prep phrase because it's not showing motion towards Grumio. It is not a verb. It's not an infinitive. You don't to Grumio something like you would to love or to eat. Grumio here is indirectly receiving the action of the verb. Melissa is the subject. She's sending something. What is she sending? She's sending flowers. Whom is she sending it to? Grumio. Therefore, it's an indirect object. Melissa here is in the nominative. Flores, that's accusative because it's the direct object. Grumioni is dative because it's our indirect object. All right, Brigance is not able to count. To count here, this isn't showing motion towards something. It's not an indirect object. It's not indirectly receiving the action of anything. This right here is the verb form, to count or to love, to eat. So this is the infinitive. Brigance is not able to count. Numerare. See the A-R-E here? That's your infinitive. All right, Salvius comes to the farm. Okay, this is not a verb. You don't to the farm something. This is not an indirect object. It's not indirectly receiving the action of any verb. This is actually showing motion to or towards something. So it is a prep phrase. And in Latin, this would be Salvius ad fundum venit. Salvius comes to the farm. All right, so quick recap. The three uses of to. They can be prep phrases, indirect objects, or infinitives. Prep phrases will always have a preposition. This is in both English and Latin. An indirect object indirectly receives the action of the verb. In Latin, it's indicated by case. It'll be in the dative. In English, it can be translated, it can be done as to or for. It can also just be position. Infinitive, that's the most generic form of the verb. It'll be a vowel plus re in Latin, and in English, it just has the word to in front of it, always. Vale, te discipuli.